There's a hot new pump on the market right now, the Eufy S1 Pro. In this video, I'm going to dive deep into what my thoughts are on this pump and the experience that many of my clients have had. My name is Katie, and I'm an IBCLC that specializes in milk supply and pumping. But before we get started, be sure to grab my free pumping comparison guide and pumping starter kit, which you can find in the description for the video below. This free resource is your ultimate guide to picking the best pump for you and also navigating pumping, so be sure to grab your copy now. The Eufy S1 Pro came out in about 2024, if I'm not mistaken. There are so many wearable pumps on the market right now, and it can feel super overwhelming when you see all the options. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, who knows if it's actually going to be worth the hype, because they were putting so much advertising in it. I saw so many influencers, so many lactation consultants hyping it up that I was like, this is going to be either awesome or it's going to be a huge letdown. I will tell you that I have been super impressed with this pump so far, and I think it's a great contender if you're looking for a wearable pump. Before I get started, I always like to start with a preface about wearable pumps, that they are typically not as effective as a traditional pump such as the Spectra or Baby Buddha. If you have an oversupply of milk, you may be able to pump with this for every single pumping session and not have any issues. However, with moms that have a lower supply or just a typical supply, any wearable pump generally shouldn't be your primary pump, especially if you're exclusively pumping or you're pumping at work. Now that we have that out of the way, though, we can dive more into the Eufy S1 Pro and what I think about it. The Eufy S1 Pro is designed by the company Eufy, which is a vacuum company. A lot of people say it makes sense that they made a great pump because their focus is on vacuums, and we definitely want something with good vacuum power. This pump comes in at two different price points. There's the Eufy S1 Pro and then the Eufy S1. The main difference between these pumps is that the Eufy S1 Pro comes with a charging case. This charging case, you plug it in to charge it up, and then you are able to put it into the charging case and charge on the go. Honestly, I don't think this is totally worth the extra cost unless you are someone that's always on the go and you don't have access to an actual outlet. It's about $110 more than just the regular Eufy S1, and I find most people should just save their money and invest that in something else. However, if you really love the idea of the charging case, go for it. Eufy did some tests with about 300 different moms when they were developing this pump and testing it out before it went on the market. Through that research, they claim that moms are able to get 30% more milk with this pump than with other pumps that are comparable. Is this true? I don't know. The moms I've worked with have had normal or lower supply, and most of them have said that they don't really get more milk. Some of them say it's less effective than their Spectra. Some say that it's as effective, but they have to pump for much longer to get the same amount of milk. So I don't know if that claim is totally true, but it is a pretty solid pump. And I do find that the vacuum suction is much better than some of the other wearable pumps on the market. They claim that it has over 300 MHz of vacuum power, which I have not tested that. That is quite a lot, but that's what they say that it has. Some of the other features of the Eufy S1 Pro that you want to be aware of is that it has a heat flow technology. This is a heating feature that is optional. You don't have to use it, but you can turn it on, and there are a variety of heating. Honestly, most of the moms I've worked with have said that the heating element isn't that intense. Some of them are like, oh, I didn't even notice it until after a while. I was like, okay, I feel a little bit of warmth. Some of the moms I've worked with, though, have absolutely loved it and said that they do feel like it helps with their milk flow. I am a big fan of heat for milk flow and for pumping, so it's a nice added feature if that's something that you're interested in. I've heard some people claim that it's going to cause some boob sweat if you have it on too much, but that's not something I have personally heard from my clients. It also comes with a mobile app, so you don't have to mess around with this top panel. You can just open up your app, you can track your output, you can create different settings in there and custom cycles. Several of the moms I've worked with have said this has been a total game changer and that they find the app has worked pretty well.
So I'm in the app right now, and one of the first things it has you do is select the rhythm that you want. And this is a technology that they have created to make your pumping experience a little bit more hands-off and help increase milk production. And you can change this at any time, but you can select max rhythm, which has the stimulation mode and the expression mode in different longer quantities. So the stimulation mode is for 1.5 minutes and the expression mode is for about 7 minutes. Then there's standard rhythm, where you just do 2 minutes of stimulation and then 28 minutes of expression, which I generally don't recommend doing that. And then gentle rhythm for moms who have sensitive nipples, and then natural rhythm, so for people that want to mimic your baby's suckling habits at the breast. I'm just going to keep it on max rhythm right now. But then you can use this app to control your breast pump, which is awesome. You can have your milk record afterwards, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can just click on the pump and you can sync them together and change. If you are in one of these modes, you can change the modes here. And then if you want to switch things, you can just press this button over here in the bottom right hand corner to switch between stimulation and expression mode. I find that the app is really easy to use, and it is absolutely fantastic for being a little more hands-free. And I do like that they have these preset rhythms, so you can play around with those and see what you think. Overall, it's just a great app, and I find that most of the moms I work with really like it.
I honestly don't love the control panel. The first time I turned it on, I was like, how do I even get this going? You have to turn it on once, and then to get it to start, you have to press the power button again. Then it will start moving, and you can play around with the different cycle settings. There are 7 different suction levels and I believe 3 different cycle speeds. And so there is some customizing that you can do with your pump settings, which I think is nice.
All right, so you press the power button and then you press that again to have it start going. This button down here switches from the letdown or stimulation mode to the expression mode. So I pressed it once. That is the expression, so that is the milk drop, and then the letdown or the stimulation mode is those 3 lines. Then you can adjust these different levels depending on what you like. And then down here is the heat, so you can turn that on or off and adjust that up here. There's a lot more settings in the app, which I do recommend using. I find that it makes this a little bit more user-friendly of a pump. But that is just a little overview of how that works.
Because it is 2 separate pieces, you can have different settings for each side, just in case your body needs to respond to something differently. The inside has this pretty high quality silicone flange. It's hard, which is nice because I don't really like silicone, and so when it's softer, I find that's not as effective. With that said, they only had the 24 of these actual flanges, which is pretty similar to pretty much every other pump company that's out there. You are going to have to use inserts, which does come with the pump. I believe it has a 21, a 19, a 17, and is compatible with most other inserts that you can buy on Amazon. I feel like it has a slimmer profile than some, but obviously not as slim as some of the other ones that are out there, such as the Mom Cozy Air, I believe is what it's called. That is slimmer. I had a mom in my office today and she said, oh, that seems so much better than the one that I have, because they have gotten considerably less bulky. One thing I immediately noticed about this pump is that it just feels higher quality than a lot of the wearable pumps out there. It looks nice, and I have not heard of a single person saying that this has totally given up on them like some of the other wearable pumps that I have seen, especially some of the older ones. I find that it is pretty quiet. Let me turn it on and see if you can hear it. It's not silent. You're not going to find many pumps out there that are totally silent and be effective, but like I'm talking and you probably can't hear that now. So I do think that this is quieter than a lot of pumps out there, which is nice, especially if you're going back to work or you're in a situation where you don't necessarily want someone to be like, what is that loud noise? They might hear a humming and be like, what is that? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I am obviously not currently lactating, which, doesn't mean that you have to be in order to talk about breast pumps. So I have talked to different clients, and I even had one of my clients give me some detailed feedback. She is a mom that had a baby in the NICU. He was born very prematurely, and she was exclusively pumping at home. It was a very stressful situation, and pumping with the Spectra around the clock was really hurting her mental health. She decided to use the Eufy S1 Pro for a while for some of her pumping sessions. And she said overall it was a great pump. She said it wasn't quite as effective as her Spectra, and because she had lower supply to begin with, she didn't recommend using it for every single pump session. However, it became very convenient for those times when she did not want to pump to be able to use the Eufy. She really liked the heating element, and she liked that you could save settings in the Eufy app. One thing she said was that she found it was a little tricky to put together. As you can see here, it is like putting Tupperware on. So it's not like the end of the world, but it does take a little bit of time to put that on there to get it all lined up correctly, which again, not a total deal breaker, but if you're trying to do this in the middle of the night, that can be a little bit frustrating. And it's still taking me a second to get that on there. So I could see that being annoying. And I'm just going to take this off again, but it has a couple different pieces. It has the flange, and then it has the electronic element, which you'll take off before you clean. And then it has this little pink thing in here and the duckbill. And so there's 5 pieces to this pump that you'll have to clean at some point or another. So most pumps do have a lot of pieces. There's no real way around that. But overall, she really did like this pump. And she said that it made a huge difference in her breastfeeding and pumping journey, especially during an already very stressful time. This pump will hold about 5 ounces to 150 mLs. I haven't heard many complaints about it leaking when it gets up to that higher amount, so that's a really good sign.
Once you're done pumping, all you have to do is remove this part, this little part that goes on top. You don't want to remove anything else or you might have some milk spillage, but then you have the milk that's in the container right here, and then you can pour it out into your bottles or your storage bags. I do feel like it's easier to actually see that you have milk in this pump as opposed to some of the other wearable pumps out there. So you don't have to be like, oh, am I actually like making any milk? Or like, do I have to take off the pump to see if I'm making milk? It is clear, so you're able to see the milk coming out of that little funnel right there. So you can see that little circular thing. You can see that, and the milk flows out of there. So I do like that design.
Overall, I honestly think this is a very solid wearable pump, and it's one that I have no hesitations recommending. I don't think that it's going to break, and they do have a good warranty if it does in that off chance, and it's just very solidly made. As I've said, wearable pumps are not always going to be ideal for most people for a primary pump, but it can be a great option for many people for when they're at work, during commutes, and during those times when you're like, I'm not going to pump, but I need to. This is going to be great for that. You can buy it at the link in the description below. Either way, I would love to hear your personal experience with this in the comments. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you need any help with pumping, be sure to consider booking a consult. I would love to help you, and my team works worldwide with a variety of insurances. Until next time, see you later.